Coaches, poor judgment might be costing you and your team. You might be unknowingly sabotaging your own learning, your development, and your perception of what good coaching is. So what is good judgment? How do you improve it? What process can you go through to become a better judge of what good coaching is and a better assessor of performance? Well, it's episode 39 of the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast. We've got Alan Keane back with us alongside Mark Bennett. Alan's been away for a few weeks. We had him in last week, but he was on a journey of discovery and learning and a lot of self-development. He's going to share the benefits of that with us. So, gentlemen, let's first of all welcome and let's jump straight into it. So, Alan, talk to us about judgment. Well, what is it and why have you arrived at this as an important concept that coaches might be overlooking?
Yeah, coaches might be overlooking. God, we're going to frustrate a few coaches starting there, and I'm not going to help that process, I guess, with my response to that question, Simon. I think it's something when you think about judgment as a thing that we naturally do, and we often don't give time and space to thought as to why am I making that judgment? Well, where's that come from? I see things a certain way. Okay, and I see things a certain way because of my previous experiences and what's worked for me in the past. And I think that the debilitating factor with judgment is just because it's worked in the past before doesn't mean things work in the future, because things move on, people are different, you're different. So I think being aware of the impact of judgment could be a good starting point for a coach to see things differently and widen your lens as to the experiences you're having or what's unfolding in front of you. There's so many different spaces to go in this. So if we think about a coach on the sideline, during a game, something happens, it's natural you're going to make a judgment. I'm not on here as a promoting Buddhism and withhold all judgments and all forms of life because they lead to suffering. That's not what I'm here, even though I do believe in that to a certain degree. Different podcast. Mark's chomping at the bit now. But I think if you think of it, the coach, when you're in the midst of coaching a game, it's very hard to withhold your judgments. But are you aware of the impact of your judgments? Do they rattle your emotional cage, or do they pull on your emotional lever, and then you make a bad decision based on a judgment you've held that was poor defense, as opposed to going, let me just withhold a judgment here, let me withhold a correction, let me withhold and hold back on a statement or an instruction, and let's see if it happens again. So I'll pause there for a second because I'm very mindful I could go down loads of different rabbit holes here, but I'm going to end my little spiel for the Irish people listening by saying your judgment and your way of judging things and the way you have been judging things might be the greatest debilitator to your progression as a coach. Now we've definitely lost some listeners, but over to Mark to lose a few more.
So if I hook it into my interpretation of judgment, it's great. Who's the organisation, Alan, that you're with at the moment in your continual world-class pursuit of excellence?
Well, the first organisation that's helping me with my excellence is a guy called Mark Bennett, another guy called Simon Turner, Movement Sports and PDS. Go look him up. And then secondary to that is UK Sport. I'm on a program at UK Sport at the moment, 19-month program supporting coaches in high-performance sports is the program.
Now, it's wonderful that an organisation like that is explicitly talking about judgment, because if anyone who's listened to this that I've mentored over the years, and if you've been on my online resource, that judgment word is in there. And I often get the odd look when I start asking about it. So if I share my interpretation of bad judgment and what it is and what it isn't, it's based on my interpretation, and everyone's can be different. Judgment for me is a collation in the moment of the data of what you're seeing now without bias or with bias. This is where it can be good or bad. The data you do or don't have from what's been happening in the past on what you're seeing. That could be the athlete's journey, the team journey, coach's journey, and their expectations moving forward, combined with the true capability or individual combination capability or individual capability of the athletes you're seeing. And then you have your state and your biases on top of that. So if we look at it, there are so many killers to good judgment. So an example may be, I'm seeing this now in a team sport. And my judgment is, because it's fine to have judgment, my judgment is they're not doing good enough. They're terrible at defense. Now, if I'm watching someone else's team, the one thing I haven't seen or know is I haven't been into the camp. I haven't seen where they were 2 weeks ago. I don't know what they've agreed with the coach and the athletes or where they're going to focus on. I don't know if they've set an 8-week target to improve in this area and this is what we're doing now. So we might work on moving a little bit earlier or actually working on keeping the hips open. I don't know these things. And because I don't know these things, I'm making judgment on what I do know if I don't have bias. If I'm not looking for, I don't like this coach, I'm looking for fault. We're not winning, so I'm looking why we're not winning. So there's all these filters based on my reference of what I think is good or bad based on what I'm seeing. So here's where the challenge is. Unless we are really objective and think, for me to make good judgment, do I have the relevant data, not just what I'm seeing and hearing now, and my bias, my state? Where's my filters? Where's my point of reference to know whether what I'm seeing is exceptional, acceptable, or unacceptable? And I know on 2 podcasts ago, Neil was talking about on his journey. And then I got to know is, well, hang on a minute, what's success for the team? What have the teams been working on? What have they agreed? Where are they working towards? So there's so many variables that will have an impact on whether I make good judgment or bad judgment. Now, here's the thing. If I'm just a spectator or I'm a mentor or observer, I'm not going to kill the game if I have poor judgment because it's in my head. Unless I'm sharing it with people around me, I've got a mic and I'm on TV and go, that's terrible. We can go back to Six Nations on that as a recent example. But if I'm a mentor, I'm not killing the game right now because then I have a chat afterwards, so long as I ask the right questions and question myself. But if I'm the coach or the person that's interacting, if I'm a parent as a spectator and I'm shouting stuff, I can be killing the performance of the athletes in front of me because my judgment is poor. What I'm concluding and then what I'm sharing vocally is ineffective, misdirected, inaccurate, unhelpful if my judgment is poor. If my judgment is good, then actually now I'm down to, right, this is the conclusion based on my judgment. What are my options right now? Then we go into the texture of the bandwidth of a coach. What can I do right now to have an effective impact? But it's based on your judgment is giving you data conclusion and then you're choosing what to do with that conclusion.
I like this idea of a filter. It's such an easy metaphor and a question to ask yourself. Well, how am I filtered here? I hear you say that a lot, Alan, on and off the court. And one of the other things I hear you say, which I'd like you to expand on, is what you see is knowledge dependent. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, when you lift up as we say in the UK, the bonnet, or if you're in any other part of the world, particularly America, the hood of your vehicle. I'm speaking Mark's language here as a avid car fan and lover. Don't ever get in the car with Mark Bennett, by the way. I made that mistake many years ago, and we took a roundabout at felt like 90 miles an hour, and Mark's just calmly explaining to me the traction on his tires, how good it is. My heart was bounding out of my chest. Moving on.
It was a successful and safe cornering.
I haven't recovered since. I'm still traumatized. But yeah, I guess when you look at something, Simon, like what's your knowledge? What can you identify that you understand, that you know? And like I think I use the car analogy as a good example. Like when I lift up the hood of a car, I know very little. I know the basics. So what I'm able to see, I'm limited. Mark could take the same perspective and see a lot more than I see. So you take it to the coach's world, because I spend a lot of intentional time around understanding the technical, tactical side of the game, the flow of the game, different things that happen during the game. I spend intentional time in that space and I question a lot of things. And I discuss those things with people who maybe have a different perspective on that. I'm developing the knowledge of what I can see. So what I see when I watch a game is knowledge dependent. I can sit down with one of you two and I can say this confidently that I will see more than you two from a technical, tactical standpoint. You may see more than me from a behavior standpoint of the coach or the players or the interaction, the connection that's happening or not happening. And I'm blindfolded to that because what I'm seeing is knowledge dependent around my area of expertise. So I think as coaches, we make judgments a lot based, and this leads me on to the topic I wanted to go to, Simon. So we've done this very well. We almost could have teed this up. I think when you're looking at another coach, and I wrote it down here as Mark was talking, quotation marks, that's good coaching, quotation marks, that's bad coaching. And you go, well, why are you making that judgment? And if you take this perspective, I think it can give us an insight as to why we make these judgments. And I wrote it down here again. I wrote down, making judgments are predicated on your own biography. And it goes back to biases, filters, but it goes a level deeper if you ask me. What you see and what you categorize as good or bad says more about your journey as a coach and your biography and what you've experienced than it says about the person you're judging. That's a whole different shift. That's a shift in mentality. That's a shift of perspective. That's a whole different way of thinking about why you think something is good or bad. First of all, somebody else coming in, and here's where it relates back to your question. What you see is knowledge dependent. Somebody else coming in who can see more than you can see because they got more knowledge in that space. They've just had more time in learning and experience and in reflection on those experiences. So they've widened what they can see, their knowledge of what they can see. They'll come in and they'll have a different perspective. But that doesn't mean you're wrong with the judgment you held. It just means that it's a representation of your biography as a coach to that point. It doesn't make you right or wrong. It says more about you than the judgment you've made, where you're at with your knowledge and what you can see. And I think that's something to be very mindful of, and it will help you to grow and develop as a coach, as opposed to be stuck in one place and hold a perspective that's limiting you, actually, and it's a limited representation of you as a coach and your knowledge. So I want to share a term to summarize all this, or to capture the essence of all this, and I have to credit Bob Muir for this term. And the term is, as opposed to observing somebody coaching, as opposed to making judgments on what you see as somebody is coaching. Now I'm talking about coaching, but we can relate this to anything. Bob used a wonderful term that I've just really hung on to a lot and tried to live it as well. And the term is encountering coaching. I'm encountering what is happening here, as opposed to I'm going to make an observation and I'm going to make judgments. I'm parking those things to one side, and I'm just allowing myself to sit in this space, to step into this environment and just encounter what is happening. I guess the closest relatable term to it I could use here is just notice what's happening, and it's very Buddhist-like, yes, not attach a judgment to it. And I'll explain quickly how I how I was lucky enough to have a conversation with Bob about this in great detail. I came back from being in New York last April, and I spent 10 days or so, or quite a period of time with an NBA franchise, with their G League team, their development squad. And I was very lucky to be inside all their meetings, video session, games, practices, and so on. And I held a perspective on what I saw. I made judgments on what I saw. I was sharing those judgments with Bob. And Bob then encouraged me to go, well, how would you feel about not holding on to any judgments and just encountering, just make sense of what you saw by positioning yourself as not judgments, but just this is what I encountered. And what you notice then is there's differences. So, for example, you and I could have a difference of opinion, Simon, on what we saw. And we would probably both benefit if we just held on to the differences and sit in that space, as opposed to going, well, no, you're wrong, I'm right, that was good coaching, no, that was bad coaching. Okay, well, what are those differences? Let's just pour them on the table and let's just, navigate them for a period of time. We might find ourselves changing our perspectives on things. And then if you go, I'll throw another phrase out there and then I'll pause for a breath. Because again, I've said this in every podcast, Mark is chomping at the bit. Mark's not chomping at the bit. He just has so much to offer. I'm always aware of that. But a wonderful phrase I heard related to this is, if you change the way you look at things, then the things you're looking at may change. And that's not saying you're wrong or right. It's just saying pause, take a breath, step back, widen your lens a little bit, stand somewhere different on the basketball court, change the way you look at things, and the things you're looking at may change. And it is about widening the perspective and holding on to boxing in judgment and just encounter what you're seeing.
I'm mindful not to go too deep, but I just want to hook in slightly deep, and then I'm going to go back to not deep. So when you talk about that point about the biography, you know, where you've been, what you've done, what's really important is there's always a paradigm shift when you start to check and challenge your perception of how you've seen your past. We did this a lot in the military when we were working with those special force type of things, is getting people to look and experience in a different way. And when we start asking the questions in a different way, we get a different conclusion to our experience. And that shifts how we see things in the future. That was my deep bit. So I think what you do, Alan, very well, it's not a think, I know you do very well. You check and challenge yourself. So you ask self questions, and if you can't answer them yourself, you seek to understand. So if I give you a great example, if there's us less youthful people in the gym, there's less of us each year, but we're still in there going for it. And there's another not youthful person, as I like to call myself now, not yet mature. And he always comes in and asks questions. And the other day he was waiting for me to finish my set, because I don't really talk to people. I've got my 90 seconds. I'm on it again. He goes, oh, 90 seconds, my mark. And he says, oh, someone said, you know, I should be doing press ups every day as part of my session. You know, what do you think about that? So my first question is always, well, what's success? It depends. What's success for you? He says, well, I don't even know. They just said it was good. Well, good for what? So if you're aiming to build at your age, if you're aiming to build your muscle growth within your chest and your triceps, then I would argue there's better ways. If you're getting ready for a competition, you're going to build some muscular endurance, or you don't like just holding a plank, you're just going to do a bit of stability, and you enjoy doing press ups, great. But we've got to understand, and if you're on a strength aim for chest, then that would not be the best option for you. But I couldn't answer that until I asked the question of, well, what is success for you? And then we can go, well, actually, there's other options. And he goes, what are the other options? I said, hang on, I've got to do my set. So I went to my set. And then I said, look, let's catch up for a session. And we did the next day. And let's just go through them. So all I'm doing then, I'm raising the awareness to that person for them to make their own informed decision. I haven't told them. I've just raised awareness, says, well, hang on, why? What's success for you? And he didn't really know. And I go, well, let's explore some of the options. And then at the end of that session, he goes, oh, I get it. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. And I go, well, just give it a shot for a few weeks and see if you get any outcome from it, as long as your food is right, your sleep, your stress management is right. So that's an example of someone can ask you a question, and it's quite easy to throw an answer back. But often we've got to say, I can't answer that question with the data I've got right now. Let me explore what's success for you. And then it may be with a team, as Alan's putting it, I'm seeing a flash, but I'm not understanding, okay, but where's the coach taking them on the journey? Where are they on that journey of development? So I'm just seeing a flash right now. So I haven't got the data to make a judgment. So I'm choosing not to make a judgment because I can't answer that question yet. But when can I? Well, I can ask the coach. I can go, can I come in and watch some of your sessions? Or I'm just interested why you're doing it that way. And we mentioned on one of the earlier podcasts, and it was a light bulb moment. I think it wasn't with Alan, just with Alan. Alan was assistant coach at Reading Rockets. There was another coach there. And I think you were assistant, Alan, at the time. And we were talking, and it was that connection in the moment of, when we're looking at what we're doing and we're asking a question is, what we got one of the coaches, it wasn't Alan was there, and we got one of the coaches because he was very judgmental of, we need to do it this way. And I just asked that coach, said, look, they've just come up with a way you've dismissed straight away as a tactic. I think it was a defense. No, in fact, it was an offensive tactic from mid-court on turnover. And I asked him, why is the idea that they've shared with you, why is it a no-go? He said, well, I need them to do it this way. I said, well, have you explored that as an option? You've dismissed it, but have you explored it? Why can't it be an option? And actually, if it's come from them, they're probably going to own it more. Could it be more successful? So on a 50-50, why not give them the opportunity to test it? So the amount of time you're giving to force your technique onto them, how about giving them the same time, or asking them, okay, well, let's test it. What level of testing do we need? How long do we need to get it embedded? Let's give it a go. And from that, we'll get learning. Now, it may be the coach goes, wow, I didn't think of that. That's great. Or it may be, actually, it doesn't work, but that has informed us all that we can add this bit and adjust this bit. So it's a great real-life example of coach-made judgment, but actually asking a few questions and actually went down a bit different path that was actually more successful than his tactic he wanted to force onto them, as an example. Do you remember that, Alan? I know it's...
Yeah, I do. I'm smiling inside, Mark. It was good times. A lot of learning happened during those times. So I do. I remember it with fondness, even though it was not easy for everybody.
Simon, I'm sorry we're cutting you out of this conversation.
No,
I thought to be silent.
I'm hanging on. Hey, can we go back just quickly, because you mentioned Neil Hull, who we had a couple of episodes ago. We're talking about judgments, and you've got your expression around UAEs, which is what's a standards, and they're agreed standards of what's unacceptable, acceptable, and excellent. Exceptional. Neil phrased it as garbage, goods, and greats, which I really liked. I think, especially coaching young people, they maybe connect with that. Those are judgments, or the UAEs are standards, but the garbage, goods, and greats are judgments, or what?
So two things with that is explaining what it is. It's a point of reference that we can pre-agree, and then we can continue to review as we grow. It will help expectations. So if we're saying it should be based on our capability and where we are at stretch. So exceptional should be, we're not capable of doing this all the time, but if we do it, my God, that would be phenomenal. But these are the things we're capable of and acceptable. So if we drop to unacceptable, that's below our capability now. So we're in control of not being there. But if we recognize it, what do we need to do differently? So if we're pre-agreeing that, now when we're looking with judgment, we're now looking at an example B. I'm looking at a team and I'm going, why is that player doing that? So my self-check is, well, hang on a minute. Where's that in our UAEs? Well, it's acceptable. And actually, we've never done it in a match at this level of pressure. So now I'm looking and go, oh, actually, that's really good for that player. So it's a point to help me calibrate where we are on expectations and capability, and also when we have those conversations. I think the important point I wanted to pop in, and great you mentioned it with Neil, is Neil changed the words. This is fine if your whole organization is changing the words to the same words. Where it can kill, as any common language is, if say there's 10 coaches, different teams, different age groups as an example, and you all decide on your version of UAEs of what they mean in words, garbage, whatever it is. And they're all different. So then that athlete gets used to it. They move up an age, or you start to coach that team, and they're using a totally different language. It gets really confusing. So my whole point is the language is a point of reference. You can change the language so long as they understand the meaning, and so long everyone involved in that organization uses the same language and it doesn't shift all the time. So that was the point I wanted to make there. So I guess there was 2 points there, Simon, is common language, consistency for simplicity, but also it can help expectations. So when you're live in judgment, you're hooking back into, well, hang on a minute, is that acceptable or unacceptable? Well, actually, based on what we agreed, it's acceptable. Well, that's going to impact my judgment now on what I'm seeing. So that's how you can use it.
Yeah. So, Alan, some of these language shortcuts like UAEs or garbage, goods, and greats, they're attractive because you can remember them, and they also shorten the conversations. So if you're in the heat of competition, you can use code words basically to describe something that's more that describes more than just one word. When you use that word garbage, if you've got a shared understanding of it, you're also explaining in one word. You're explaining a concept, so you're agreeing on the concept with that other person because you've agreed the term. But the language we use also inherently inhibits our judgments because we start to break down the nuance. So this is a dilemma I have. Sometimes a lot of coaching conversations and coach development conversations are so nuanced and always requiring this awareness of state, and that they sometimes get a bit debilitating. And sometimes it's good to shortcut, but knowing when to shortcut and when to go in depth is really quite difficult. I've been on the end of both types of conversations. I've been on both ends of both types of conversations. Like, how do you know when you're supporting a coach, like what type of conversation to have and how deep to go?
Can I ambush the response, Alan? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you go ambush away. Who am I to
was-
tell you stop? I mean, I
So-
could use pineapple right now,
Yeah, you
but I
could.
won't.
Give me
Go for
some
it.
space before the pineapple
You
pops
go,
in that
mate.
you used so well before the recording started, Alan. So think about it like this, Simon, is I'm making judgment now. If I'm checking expectations, and that's the beauty of pre-agreement, at least I can check and challenge myself now of how calm down. Have I ever seen in a match? No. What have we agreed? What have we seen? What have we shown? Okay, now I've got to a point of going, now I've recalibrated. But I still may not know what my intervention is if it's words to action or thoughts to action, where I'm thinking, right, I'm thinking this now, what I'm going to do. Nothing, or I'm going to sideline, or whatever it may be. So now this is where the action review comes in, because now I'm looking for, remember those 4 stages we talked about? I'm aware there's a problem. I'm now looking at, okay, so I'm aware there's a problem. I'm now recognizing what the solution is. Now I'm looking for acting on the solution based on our capabilities. So most people can recognize there's a problem. Not many people can then recognize, okay, so what's the solution? And then if it's team, the added texture is, then we need to go, how can I communicate the solution and know the capability of my teammates can do this at this level of pressure? And then the last one, the real success comes in, is we actually commit to it. That words to action process. So now if I develop that in athletes, that helps. But here's back to the judgment point. I've got a point of reference now, so I'm not getting carried away. How am I looking? But now I'm going, okay, so now I've made judgment of, I'm now looking for where's the source. I've recognized there's an issue, or I'm celebrating, but if there's an issue, the actual review process helps me understand where the source is, back to source. So now I'm looking for, is it a state issue? I'm scanning. Now I could do this at self, by the way, but I'm looking at a team or an individual. Am I looking for, okay, is it scanning? Now, we've talked about a few podcasts ago what is scanning, what it's not. How are they capturing the relevant data, or even looking in the right place and selecting it? Then I'm looking for, okay, so what options is there for me or for them? What are the influences? Okay, then I make a choice. So at least then under those moments of pressure, it's, okay, I'm making judgment, something's not right. But now I'm going, well, where's the source? So now I'm hooking back into, I'm finding the source. So if it's a state source, now I'm looking at, okay, so if the source is state, what's causing it? What intervention can I have? Or is it's just one of those moments, we're at a higher level we've ever played. The pressure, we're in a phenomenal team now, and that person looks lost because the ref keeps calling them, or the umpire keeps calling them. They don't know what they're doing wrong. And no teammate has reached out and go, just make this adjustment. So they keep doing it. And now they're unraveling in state, and now that's killing everything. So now I can go, okay, so now what is my choice of intervention? It's still judgment, but now I'm doing it in a thoughtful way, not in a just, well, I always do this, or, oh, let's just do this, without understanding. Let's go through a thought process. It's going to help me under pressure or not pressure, get to the point, and then choose what intervention and then how I can communicate that intervention.
I'll respond, Si, unless you have something you're holding on to there that you want to contribute to Mark's offering.
No, go for it.
First of all, learning, I'm going to answer the question in a minute. I just want to preempt it by saying learning takes effort. And if you're not willing to understand that learning requires effort, then don't try to learn. Like, just stop lying to yourself. We've never sworn on this, so I won't swear now, but stop BSing yourself. Like, I think Simon might have swore previously, but that's the Kiwi coming out of him. I can say that as an Irishman. Yeah, so maybe there is judgments being made, or maybe there is a commitment to the terminology, and it's hard to remember that, and you have to embed that into your memory, and then act on it when it's sounded during the course of play. And yeah, that's effort. You can't be afraid of that. You can't shy away from that. If you want to grow, you want to develop, it takes effort. None of this happens quick. But go back to the judgment part. Judgments. It's not a bad thing. Like, I'm listening here going, how am I experiencing what Mark is saying there, and how we're talking about judgment? We're not saying it's a bad thing. It's a bit like your previous episode I wasn't on, Simon. I heard you say, hold on to your beliefs and values, have beliefs, have values, but hold on to them loosely, I think is the term you used, or is the way you
Yes.
phrased it.
Strong opinions lightly held.
Yeah, lightly strong opinions, highly held. Love it. Because I would say judgments are the same. You have to make, if a judgment is, I'm noticing what's happening, I'm gathering dates, I'm gathering information, I'm in the course of a game or a practice, I have to make a choice on something to do. There's a judgment attached to that. Of course. So now you go back to that performance review cycle. Make a choice, commit to the choice or not. Let's say you have committed to the choice, summarizing some of Mark's stuff. Then what did you extract from that? What information did you get from it after you committed to the choice? Now that may change the next choice you make based if you have the same context again. So again, judgment is part of that cycle. It's part of the process. We're not, like I said to you at the start of this isn't a practice of Buddhism where you're withholding judgment and you could, because in sports we're constrained by time. We're constrained by opposition. We're constrained by the teammates I'm playing with. We're constrained by the game plan. We've got all these things at play. So you have to make judgments and hold on to those judgments loosely, reflecting on the judgment you made, and be open to change. Be open to the fact that that was poor judgment. Be open to the fact that I need to reflect and review on that judgment. And now that will inform the next decision I make. This is what and Mark, I believe, just discussed there is the healthiest way to go with this. And just be open to the fact that I may be wrong. My judgments might be wrong. There may be a better judgment to make, or there may be more information to take on to inform the next judgment, i.e. decision.
And I think that's an important point, Alan, is that there is no guarantee that the judgment we make in any moment, if it's now thought to words to action, that it's correct or not. But what we can do is we're more thoughtful and inquisitive, and we're managing our state well, and we've got the data we need to allow us to make more informed choices, which will be based on judgment. Is I'm committing to that based on what I know. And then I'm looking at it, and often you won't get the outcome you want, especially if your expectations are a little high. But what we're saying is it maybe we're planting a seed. Maybe we're getting someone to think in the moment a little bit differently, but we're not going to see the outcome for weeks based on need-centered. But your point, Alan, is so important, is we're asking coaches, I do it when I'm mentoring coaches and managers, we're asking coaches to do it with athletes. We're asking athletes to qualify and quantify the experience they've just had without first judging them. I want to know, I'm not sure why you did that, or I think you should have done that. That's in me. I'm mindful not to project that now to the athlete. I'm now in inquisitive mode. I want to understand how that athlete came to that decision. Then I use an action review process. I can use others. Okay, talk to me. What happened over there? Okay, so what did you see here? So what I'm looking for is their thought process of how they got to what they did, and see if they've worked out, actually it was wrong choice or wrong execution, or I missed a bit of data. Next time I'm going to do that. So we're looking for next time, but we also do that when they do things great, because we want to go, I'm doing that again. That was phenomenal. But I can't make judgment on that athlete until I'm inquisitive to understand how they came to that decision. And often it might be, whoa, I didn't even think of that myself. Okay, so positioning, Alan, you've mentioned it on previous podcasts. So if you haven't listened to all of them, you've got to go back because we're referencing these, everyone. Is that point of I'm stood in a place on the court or on the pitch. An athlete stood somewhere else, especially if you've got 6 foot, 5 foot, 8 foot, whatever it is at any age group. 8 foot, other 8 foot people, possibly somewhere. So we're looking now is I'm seeing what I'm seeing, but I'm stood over here. That athlete's there in movement. I'm thinking you should have done that. And as soon as the athlete goes, well, actually, this is what I saw, I'm now saying, well, they couldn't have seen what I saw because there was 3 people stood in their way, a blind spot. Oh, I get it now why you made that decision. Now, that may be their awareness about being mindful of your blind spots. Could you make a little adaptation, adjustment, step back forward? Or it may be, yeah, no problem at all. I get that now. So this is where judgment is influenced by your openness to seek the data that can help inform your judgment before and post.
You know what we're back to, Simon? I'll just squeeze this in. Self-awareness, and this is what we're really talking about. Like, how aware are you of some of the judgments you make and the potential harm associated to those judgments? And I'll give you a great example. A player comes in late to a practice session, and you as a coach just demonstrate anger, frustration, and displeasure as to why they've turned up late. You've made a judgment that they're not committed, they're lazy. You've made a judgment that they don't care. Well, that's just poor awareness from the coach as to what may have got in that player's way as they were walking out the door to go to practice. They might be a young carer. They may be looking after a family member who's terminally ill. And they've come into the session late, and because it's your environment, you're the coach, they've almost insulted you by turning up late. You've made a really poor freaking judgment, and shame on you as a coach for not being aware enough or being self-aware that there may be more behind the reason they showed up. So we're back to self-awareness as the key facilitator to be better at judging or making judgments, or how are you experiencing the judgments you're making? Just take a breath and think about, I've made a judgment here. Why did I make that judgment? Why did I go there? What's behind it? And that's not easy, guys. Don't get me wrong. I fall at that hurdle still, and I'm quite aware of this. And this is why support from other people help you in that space. But self-awareness as to the judgments I make, are they good? Are they bad? Who do they affect? Why am I making them? And what's the ripple effect, both good and bad? And one more, what's the opportunity for me as a coach to grow and develop if I start to question the judgments I'm making? Because there's only growth that can come from that. And now, effectively, what you're growing is your level of self-awareness.
Right, guys, we've got 4 minutes left on this episode. So I'm going to challenge you to take what is quite a meaty and reflective topic and distill it down to some little bits that coaches can take away. We've had some great expressions so far, so we can go back to some of the things that have been said so far in this episode. So let's share some ideas about little tips, questions you can ask yourself, ways of reframing judgments that coaches can take away from this episode. Mark?
Make sure you're setting fair expectations based on capability in software or hardware first, and be thoughtful and mindful of that before you make judgment.
Alan?
Write your own biography and do it in a paragraph, do it in a page. Just like, who am I as a coach, and why do I think the way I do as a coach? And then you'll start to notice the things you don't think of as a coach that might widen. So your biography goes from being a paragraph to a book at some point in time in your life, and then you can bring out chapter, 25, and then you can write episode 2 or the sequel and continue to grow as a coach. But start with, what's the biography like? Who am I? And why do I think the way I think?
That's lovely. I can start with building on noticing. Take an area of your life that's non-coaching and just focus on it for a couple of days and notice what you notice. Notice how you notice. So your home life, for example, are you making judgments that you maybe didn't realize you're making? That was huge growth for me when I started really shining a light on the micro judgments, sometimes positive judgments I was making at home or in your work life or some aspect of your life that's non-coaching, and just notice that and then start to transfer that across to coaching. Mark?
Judgment happens, embrace it. We need to make judgment. We need to be mindful of, we can make good and bad judgment. It can't be guaranteed every time, but be mindful of, do I have the data I require to make the judgment? And understanding you can still train it. So a Formula One driver in a race is making live judgments all the time. When do I go? What's the gap? Do I hold back? Sports teams, athletes do all the time. But the whole purpose of practice for us as coaches and athletes is to seek space and time to allow us to make more informed judgment, and then to reflect on that judgment, to either hang on to it or progress it. Okay, I've learned something there, next time I'll do this. But also understand, good or bad judgment can't be based on outcome, because it may be that was the right intervention time. I didn't get the result I wanted, but it was still the right judgment at the time, the choices I made from it, or I made good judgment, but actually I didn't commit to what I knew I needed to do at the time. I withdrew from that. I avoided it. So there is correlation between other things, but don't think judgment is bad. Judgment happens. We need to be good at it, but how informed are we to allow us to be conscious about the judgment we make?
Alan?
Here's a practical one you could do in your very next session, very next practice session, very next encounter with another person, very next game. Go into that practice session and completely clear your filter on how you see things. Change the way you look at stuff. So, for example, for me would be, I believe in aggressive coverages with ball screen defense as playing off the front foot, we control the game or whatever. Actually go into the next practice session and go, no, I'm going to completely change my perspective and see drop coverage as a good solution to what we're doing, and get rid of that bias and change the way I look at how we're defending the ball screen, because the way we defend the ball screen may actually change and I might widen my lens. So change the way you look at things intentionally. Change the way you look at the players that you coach. You hold the perspective, completely flip it on its lens. Simon Turner, he's always late. He's lazy. He doesn't run very fast. He's slow. He's terrible on defense. He's always late. But actually, no, let me look at Simon and think that Simon's really good on defense. And I might find the good things that Simon suddenly does. Now I'm changing the way I look at Simon. And now Simon's changing in my mind. It's healthy.
Right. Okay, let's try to wrap things up. I've got a couple of just quotes that I've written down here before I pass over to Mark for the inevitable extra one. What you see is knowledge dependent. Strong opinions lightly held. Encountering. Replacing observing or judging with encountering. And I'm going to probably butcher this. You said it, Alan. If you change how you see things, you change what you see.
I would change the terminology.
Yeah. Thanks.
If you change the way you look at things, you might change. The things you look at may change. If you change the way you look at things, then the things you look at may change.
Great. Okay, Mark, finish us off here.
I'll just throw in a tool then. So the covert recall can be a great way to calibrate back to reality of whatever I think should be happening, whatever my judgment is on, we've trained this, so therefore I should be seeing this. This isn't good enough. The covert recall, step back, throw them in a situation. We're not talking about it. You might get them folks on attack if you want to scan defense, and you're just stepping back and going, what am I seeing? Not what am I seeing with expectations. What am I seeing? What is reality? What is baseline? That's truth. That's what it is. From that, then that can help inform you to allow you to be more balanced in your judgment of what you're seeing.
Well, coaches, thanks for bearing with us on what is quite a heavy topic. This podcast is not about clickbaiting or giving you just copy and paste cookie cutter kind of solutions. This is about going deep when we need to go deep, but always bringing it back to what's practical. So we hope if you've listened to the end here that you've actually shifted some of your thinking around what good judgment is, and you've grown your own awareness and understanding of how you make judgments. So as always, please feel free to comment, like, share, get in touch with us. We love getting messages every week from coaches who listen to the pod. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks, guys.
See you later.